Good morning. Welcome to Coffee with the Pastor. Glad you could join me this morning. Sorry I'm running a little late. Had two things happen this morning. Number one, had a detour on the way. I've got problems here. Hang on. It's one of those mornings that everything goes wrong. I had a detour coming to work. And then got here and my audio-visual stuff's not wanting to work right. So I apologize for that. But we're going to get started here in just a minute. Let me just do it this way. We're in the book of Esther, and let me remind you, we have some characters in this story. God's name is not mentioned in the book of Esther, yet you see God's hand working through the whole thing. The Jewish nation is going to be spared and going to be saved because of that. Without what happens here, we might not have a Jewish nation. But we have King Xerxes. Now, King Xerxes was a very powerful king. Came about yay close to being much more powerful than the Roman Empire ever thought about being. He thought he just about conquered Europe. Came real close, but didn't. And I'm grateful for that. We wouldn't have Western civilization if he hadn't. I'm so sorry. I'm having stand problems, everything else. Okay, there we go. And then, but he's very, very powerful, and he throws this huge party. He has a queen by the name of Vashti. It's very beautiful. He tries to bring her in and have people oogle and google her, kind of like a sex object. She refuses. So he has her banished. They look for a new queen, and Esther is chosen. She is the queen, but he has a harem of wives. And so we see that we have Xerxes, we have Esther, and we have Mordecai. Mordecai is probably Esther's cousin, maybe uncle. He's the one that raised her. He's a father figure to her, and he checks on her and all. And he hangs around the palace a lot. Well, Xerxes has a prime minister or a right-hand man. He's not called prime minister there, but he has that role of Haman. And Haman walks by Mordecai a lot, but Mordecai never bows down. And it bugs him to death that Mordecai will not bow down to him. And I think he probably checked out and figured out that just Jewish folks aren't going to bow down to a man. That they only bow down to God. And so he's very aggravated about that. So he figures out a way, and he makes a decree where on a certain day in the future, people can attack the Jewish folks and they can kill them. He wants them killed, and those who kill them can take their property and their possessions and things. So he's done that. So Mordecai finds out about that. He sends word to Esther she needs to do something. And yesterday we kind of left it where Mordecai had said, this may be the very day why God has put you on this earth. And Esther says, okay, I'm going to do something about it. And if I die, I die, because the wives were not to go into the presence of Xerxes without him inviting them. But she probably gets all dolled up, and she goes into Xerxes' presence. And he accepts her. He welcomes her. He puts his scepter out and says, what can I do for you, my queen? And she asks him and Haman to come to lunch. And of course, Haman's feeling good about this because Haman is just kind of a very insecure guy. You get that feeling, and very ambitious. And so he's feeling good about it. So he goes and has lunch with Esther and Xerxes. And Esther doesn't do anything about it. She just says, will you come back tomorrow? And so they both agree to come back tomorrow. And Haman's leaving feeling pretty good. But then he goes by Mordecai. And Mordecai will not bow. And it just incenses him that he does this. And so he goes home and he's mad. And so those around him just say, well, why do you need to wait till that day? Go ahead and have Xerxes have him killed tomorrow. Go ahead and build a gallows. So he built a 75-foot pole for him to be impaled on. Put it there where everybody could see it. And he built the pole, and he was going to have Mordecai killed the next day. But interesting thing happens that night. Xerxes can't sleep. And so one of the ways that he tries to go to sleep is he has the chronicles read of what's happened in his kingdom. And so he has somebody come in and start reading him the chronicles. And guess what? They come across the place where Mordecai overheard a plot to assassinate Xerxes. Mordecai tells Esther. Esther sends word to the king. They investigated. It was true. And Mordecai had literally saved Xerxes' life. And he hearing about this, and he says, well, what do we ever do for this guy Mordecai? And the guy reading that part said, well, we didn't do anything for him. And he says, well, there needs to be something done for him. So the next morning, he's bound and determined to do something for him. So Haman comes in, and Xerxes starts saying, well, I have somebody in my kingdom I want to honor, and I want to honor him well. How would you do it? Haman thinks he's talking about him. Haman thinks he's going to get to do this. And he says, well, what I would do is I'd get the royal robes, I'd put it on that person, I'd put him on a horse that you've ridden, and I'd have one of the highest nobles lead the horse and him around saying, this is how the king treats those who do well for him. And so Xerxes says, that's a good plan, and I want you to honor Mordecai that way. Now, this is the guy that Haman's wanting to kill. And he has to put the royal robes on Mordecai. He has to put him on one of Xerxes' best horses, and he has to lead around the city saying, this is how the king treats those that he whom to honor all over the city. That must have galled him. So anyway, he gets back from that, and then it's probably time for the lunch with Esther and the king. And so the king says, okay, this is 2 days. You want something. What do you want? I'll give it to you. And she says, well, I want to know why you want to kill my people. Now, she's not revealed that she's Jewish up until this time. She said, why you want to kill me and my people? And Xerxes says, who wants to do that? She said, Haman with that decree. And so Xerxes gets mad. He walks out. Haman realizes he's in trouble. And so he starts begging the queen, and he gets on the couch where the queen is lounging. And Xerxes comes in, thinks he's trying to attack her, and says, okay, that's it, you're gone. And so he thinks, what should I do with him? And then they covered his head, and that apparently means doom in their society. So what should I do? And there's a eunuch there by the name of Harboni. And Harbona said, well, you know, the guy's just built the gallows to put Mordecai, the guy you honored today. He was going to put him on there. Why don't you do that? And so he puts Harbona talks him into putting Haman on the gallows, and then so that was kind of ironic. And then he does something interesting. He makes Mordecai the prime minister, and Mordecai, they have something called, when something is decreed, the law of the Persians and the Medes, once they make a law, they can't undo it. And so they made another law that the Jews could band together and could defend themselves. And so when the day came that they were to be attacked, they really weren't, and the city officials and everybody helped them, and they were able to do that. Mordecai then became the prime minister. The Jewish nation is saved. And God uses Esther and Mordecai to do it. And they still have a time that they talk about every year that the Jews still celebrate what is called Purim, where they have a couple of days of celebration, giving gifts and feasting and all during that time to celebrate that day. Again, God's name wasn't mentioned one time in there, but you see God's providence working all through it. And it's amazing. And I think we need to realize that in our lives. Whether we mention God or not, God's working in our lives it's good to recognize. Well, it's the weekend. I hope you're planning upon being in church Sunday. And if you're around here, I hope you come to our church. If you're out of town, I hope you find a good church to go to. And I hope you have a great weekend. Bye, and blessings upon you.